Hi, welcome to the Bay Area Women's Theater Festival Amplify Artist Conversations. I'm Ariella Wolfe, one of the BAWTF Instigators on the Amplify team. Amplify is a 24-hour performance event originally scheduled at Brava Theater for April 18th and 19th, with 70 plus performances by over 200 artists. And with theaters closed due to the COVID-19 pandemic, our Amplify event is on hold, but we refuse to allow the need for social distancing to keep us from amplifying our amazing women, non-binary, and trans artists' work. Please stay tuned for the rescheduling of the BAWTF Amplify performance event, as well as a virtual mini Amplify event on April 18th. You can find out more by visiting our website at www.bayareawomenstheaterfestival.com. But in the meantime, we are in conversation with clown, aerialist, and director Felicity Hesed about her project, Cara Vita, a Clown Concerto. You can find out more information about her work on Cara Vita at www.felicityhesed.com. Hi, Felicity. Thank you so much for being a part of our Amplify event and for joining us today.
Hi, I'm so happy to be here.
Thanks. First of all, I just want to ask, how are you doing?
I am doing well. Yeah, I have a place to live. As a performer and director, most of my work is on hold. But I am thankful to have a partner who still has a job. Um, my children have been doing school from home, so that's kept me plenty busy. And of course, I have plenty to do for my career in terms of brushing up my website, and I've got a few virtual projects in the works. So I'm staying busy and enjoying the family time.
Amazing. Yeah, well, we'll circle back hopefully to hear about some of those virtual projects. That's really exciting. Speaking of exciting, I know you recently came back from a tour with Cara Vita in January and February of this year. That was in San Francisco, Asheville, London. Could you share a bit about how that was for you?
Yeah, it was amazing. We kicked it off here in San Francisco, hometown, of course, and that was in early January. That was awesome. We got to do the show at Circus Center, which is the place where I teach and I train there, and actually developed the show as an artist in residence there. So it was wonderful to be able to kick off the tour by doing a local show. And that was great. And then we went to Asheville, North Carolina, for the Fringe Festival there. We did two performances there. Um, and that's a really cool festival. It's one weekend only, but it's packed with performers, all different kinds of art forms, music and dance and theater. So that was really exciting. And we were really well received. I don't think people in Asheville had quite seen the kind of work that we do. So that was really exciting. And then, of course, going to London was really exciting. London is very cool. Uh, and that was part of the Vault Festival, which is actually a huge festival. It's like almost rivals Edinburgh with how big it is. It's an 8-week festival with um, just hundreds of performances. So we had performances over 1 week, and it went extremely well. It was our show was really well received, and I got some really great reviews. You can check them out on my website. Uh,
Amazing.
and when you go to a place like London, you kind of think, maybe they've seen it all before. London is obviously a huge theater town, and I think our work was really stood out and was unique. I got comments from actually a photographer who takes pictures of shows for a living, and he said, "I've never seen anything like this." So we were really excited to see that our work still is really fresh and innovative, even in a town like London. So, and Asheville and London, they couldn't have been more opposite in terms of the experience of just like putting on a show in a new city. Asheville is so sweet, and it's small, and people are so nice and helpful, and London is so big and busy. And so it was really just like an incredible life experience.
That's amazing. Yeah, I think we're really excited to hopefully be able to bring you back when Amplify is able to take up physical space again. And I remember experiencing your work through your submission and just being really blown away by how delightful, but really like honest and funny it is. So I'm really glad to hear that other people think it's great too. Yeah. And actually, speaking of this project, I was wondering if you could share with our listeners a bit about how Cara Vita was conceived. I'm doing my air quotes here. How something that can travel to festivals overseas and in many different parts of the country, how something like that comes about.
Sure. So I started working on the project a little over a year ago. I guess I started really seriously kind of formulating it in my brain in January of 2019. Um, and I was sort of dreaming it up and drawing pictures and all of those things. Uh, and then, by happenstance, it's sort of the way these things happen. Andrew Wood at the San Francisco International Arts Festival, he had reached out to me about bringing a show maybe to the festival. And it was just kind of perfect timing where I was like, oh, I had this idea, and he reached out to me. And I said, okay, why not? Let's jump and let's just do it. So I signed on to do that, and spent basically January through May of 2019 just like deep in development for this show. I worked with Jeff Raz as my
Mhm.
director. Probably a lot of people know him. He's amazing, amazing clown, amazing actor and director and circus performer. Currently, now he's an author as well. And one of the things I really loved about working with Jeff is that he always recognized that it was my vision and my creation, and was there to support that, to help me shape it, to be an outside eye and a sounding board. But it was never heavy handed. So I still would say, like, I absolutely maintained control as the creator of the show. So we worked together in development last spring. And then during part of that was this decision to work with a violinist on stage. And
And I just
I
have to say that's a beautiful visual of the clip that I've seen. It's just really striking.
Yeah. So we started working with Claire Arminante. She's a local violinist. She's incredible. She's like the most versatile violinist I know. She plays in a hip hop band and a tango band and bluegrass, and also does classical music. And actually, she was in Sting, Sting,
Oh,
Sting's
you're
show
that.
until that had to get shut down, sadly. But so she's
Mhm.
incredible. I was so lucky to work with her. And
Does she
she's
have a website or anything that we might be able to share to help promote her work?
absolutely, I can't give you the URL right this second, but maybe
It's
we can
okay.
add it on.
Maybe we
Okay,
can drop it in the link. We'll drop it in the description below. We'll come back to it.
for sure. Okay.
Anyway, carry on.
But yeah, so she's awesome. And, uh, she just jumped right in. She's never done clowning, but she just like, I would say that she's absolutely a comedic presence in her own right. And, once I started working with her, we really like developed her into her own character in the show. So we did the International Arts Festival last May and June. Over the summer, I started just applying for festivals and stuff. I knew the show was special and I wanted to get it out into the world, and we got accepted into some, and that took us to those festivals I told you about. So that's kind of how it came to be. In terms of more the like where the idea came from, the show really is about being a woman and a mother and an artist, and it's
Yeah.
it's really an exploration of what that feels like. And so the whole show is kind of a woman's life on fast forward. It starts with the career. And then quickly my character falls in love. And then almost immediately we have babies on stage, and, we're deep into family life, me and this person from the audience that I've fallen in love with. And then it all begins to fall apart, as so many relationships do. And then, my character on stage is left alone with three babies, and trying to make that work. And after a while, sort of starts to realize that she's lost herself and lost her career. And which I think is an experience that a lot of adults can relate to, especially having children, that you start to sometimes kind of wonder what happened to you in the midst of all of that. But I would say the show's very hopeful, and inspiring for people. Yeah.
Yeah, if that doesn't make you all want to come see this show, I don't know what will. I'm definitely I feel like that's such a honest theme that it can be so healing. I feel like, to see things like that explored on stage with humor, and not shying away from things that are so commonly experienced but maybe not talked about very much.
Yeah, and that was one of my goals with the show, for sure, is that in my experience, I do have two children, and being a performer, especially a trapeze artist, it's not there's not a lot of people who do that and have children. It's not an easy career to follow with children. And I also feel that I've always had this expectation, or felt this sort of social pressure, to always feel like happy and excited about having children. And isn't motherhood wonderful and beautiful? And it is. And it's also hard and heartbreaking. And there's a lot of regrets that come up, and a lot of anger and frustration, and a lot of love and happiness and joy and all of those things. But I feel like sometimes people feel like they can't talk about the ones that feel a little more negative. And one of my hopes with this show was to kind of put it out there so that people didn't have to feel so isolated in that, so that they could feel like, I'm not the only one. I'm not crazy. Like, yeah.
I mean, I think I don't, full disclosure, I don't have any children yet, but a lot of the artists on our Amplify and just general Bay Area Women's Theater Festival Instigator team, and we call the sort of the curators and producers Instigators. And a lot of them do have, children and families. And when I first joined the project as an instigator back in September of 2019, it wasn't something that came up right away. So when certain people were like, "Oh yeah, putting my kid to bed," or I'm going to get on the call in a minute, I gotta finish feeding my kids dinner, I caught myself checking myself and saying, "Oh yeah, like, of course, it's just another part of life." And really great for me as a younger artist and theater maker to see women parenting, people of all backgrounds parenting and making their art. So yeah, thank you for doing what you do and for sharing this and putting it out there.
Yeah.
And speaking of that, because I think one of the reasons why we're doing this 24-hour Amplify event is to really just surround ourselves with the work by amazing women and non-binary artists, and celebrate each other and inspire each other. Was there a particular reason why you felt that being in this festival was significant for this project? We maybe already touched on it, but if there's anything else that comes to mind.
Sure. Well, as I did say, the show really is about, like, a woman's life. I don't think that excludes men from enjoying the show, certainly, or non-parents, from enjoying the show. But the show is essentially the story of a woman. And, this festival being a women's festival, being in San Francisco, those all felt like no-brainers to me. I would say most of my work is kind of, I would say, based in the female experience, and seeks to sort of put those stories out there. And with this show, specifically sort of a mother's story, because I don't think those stories are out there very much. And it is my story. It's interesting though. My husband has actually also helped me with the project some. He came on tour with me and did like the tech theater stuff for it. And at one point he said, it's really amazing watching this show because it's not for me. And he said, so much stuff out there I don't even realize, but it's sort of intended for the like white male gaze. And he said the show is not like, and it not in a like anti-male way. It's not about men, and it's not really for them in terms of it doesn't cater to that viewpoint at all. And I did, that wasn't exactly intentional. I just made the story that I wanted to tell. But I do think that's can end up being it's different than a lot of the work out there, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think another aspect of this festival is, taking up space, not at a detriment to someone else, but exactly like you said, this is the story that I want to tell. And, it's going to resonate with people just because it doesn't cater to a certain life experience. It doesn't mean it's any less valid. And that feels totally in line with this festival. So it makes a lot of sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And another question that I had, sort of a bigger question, I guess, but something maybe to share with folks listening who are, we're all going through this experience of, being affected by the coronavirus in one way or another. But so we're all going through a somewhat challenging time. But I was wondering if there's been inspiration that's kept you going through other difficult moments in your career, or if there's ever been a point where you wanted to give up on your art and found a way to keep going.
Sure. Yeah, I would say, the thing that artists don't say out loud is that we probably wonder every day if we should give up. Or maybe that's just me. I don't know. Maybe I'm weird, but, it's not easy to continue to push forward with your ideas. There's always the question of, is this any good? Does anybody want to see it? Is it worth all of this time and energy? I feel like that's kind of a constant question. Certainly, uh, having children sort of threw a wrench in the system, but in some ways, for me, that was kind of the thing that made me realize, oh, actually, I do really want to do this. I found it important. Like I wanted my children to be able to see that I'm the kind of person who is creative, that takes initiative and makes things. I didn't want them to have the experience of just having a mom who kind of is just there to take care of them without any life of her own. So I found it actually having children was kind of inspiring to me as an artist to keep going, to do this and push forth, even though logistically it was more challenging. And, it's funny. I joke sometimes that this show is kind of a fantasy of what would have happened if I hadn't made the show. The story of like a woman's life falling apart. And I kind of feel like if I hadn't kept up with my art, if I hadn't kept working with people, not just on this show, but other shows, then, that would have been my story. It would have been really heartbreaking, but I don't know. Art has saved me. Trapeze has saved me. This is a lot of people are aerialists when they're young and then they stop. I didn't become a professional aerialist until after having children, which is totally weird. Nobody does that. But
You do.
that's what happened to me. So I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if that exactly answered your question, but I would say, yeah. Oh, in these moments of like feeling isolated, feeling alone, that is like when we need art the most, because that's what pulls us outside of ourselves, allows us to express ourselves, to connect with other people. Yeah, I find it to be a saving grace.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me, right? Like you can find inspiration and like a reconnection with re- reconnecting with like what keeps you going in the most surprising ways and kind of unexpected moments. But um, that's that's part of what makes us human, I feel like. And I mean, I think I personally spend a lot of time in art spaces, whether that's virtually or physically, and surrounded by a lot of artists. But sometimes I feel like it's easy to get disconnected from how meaningful our work can be to people who may not practice art professionally or have their own artistic practices, but maybe haven't experienced a live clowning show that involves aerial arts and comedy and all of that. That the work we do is not just like a saving grace for us, but it really does resonate and have an impact on other people. So thank you for sharing, like how we're getting through this.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's been really lovely talking with you. I was wondering if before we close, oh, you wanted to share something about your virtual work, or if you do, is there anything that you're doing online these days that you think is really exciting?
Yeah, I do have a few things in the works. Unfortunately, right before everything shut down, I had just started working on a project at Circus Center as part of they do a couple of shows each year that combine like student performers and some staff performers and professional performers to do these big shows. So I was directing that, and we were all gearing up to do a Midsummer Night's Dream, like a circus karaoke version with sing along from the audience and very immersive and interactive. And then everything shut down. so, so speaking of the like inspiring people and working with people, we've actually decided to continue to work on the project, and so we've been doing Zoom rehearsals, which is
Mhm.
quite interesting. I'm learning a lot how to direct over Zoom, and we are just continuing to develop the show, and we're keeping track of a lot of the stuff we do, so we may end up with a very different project than what we set out to make. But it's been really amazing continuing to meet with these people and get to see their faces, get to work on songs and dances and the script work. So that's awesome. And you'll see some of my posts on that and hopefully more to come from that show. And so that's one thing. And then another project that I am working on is like an online series of little webisodes with my partner Texas Holly. We do these characters Marigold and Betty that are twin sisters, and we are working on some little video episodes of these sisters while in quarantine. I keep saying that weird word funny, sorry. um, we're apart, so the whole series is sort of us connecting over a distance with one another. And Colin Johnson, incredible director and filmmaker, he's working with us on the project. So we're trying to get a few episodes under our belt before we put them out to the public. But if you stay tuned, we'll have some of those out there hopefully in the next couple of weeks. So.
Amazing. Yes, everybody, please go and find Felicity on social media. Check these things out. I think I did see when I was preparing for the interview something about your work in process with the Midsummer Night's Dream rehearsals and Zoom experiments. So I just have to ask because there are certain things that work well in virtual space for arts and things that don't. How are you handling the singing?
Yeah, that's really difficult. It was hilarious at the first rehearsal when we all tried to sing together. And what happens is that, the Zoom tries to catch who's making the sound and it cuts people out. So it bounces all over. So that doesn't work. So we've been working on the songs with people just putting themselves on mute and singing by themselves in their own
Mm.
space. We're hoping to try next time, kind of like allowing one person at a time to take audio lead. Uh,
Mm.
so
That's awesome.
it is a really difficult thing to rehearse. we're having much better luck with dancing is working great. Scene work is good. Of course, we can't do any physical comedy because we can't be in the same space as each other, or not like collaborative physical comedy. So that's frustrating. But we're doing things that I wouldn't have done otherwise, probably. Partially, we have a little more time, to kind of expand with this project, whereas usually we're like jamming it all in time for the production. But we're doing a lot of work on like visual images for the show and just kind of digging into the script a little deeper than we probably would have had time for. So hopefully I'll start getting some of that stuff out there for people to take a little gander at as well.
That's awesome. So great to hear. Yeah, really inspiring. Um, and in closing, I was just wondering if you could share something with our listening audience out there. Is there anything you'd want folks to know about the work you do, your art?
Yeah, well, it's probably clear after hearing this interview, but I would say that one of the most important things to me as an artist is creating those connections with people. And that feels especially frustrating right now because it feels so much harder. It's one of the reasons I love doing live performance. Most of my work is really interactive, really brings the audience into it. And and it's really all about making those connections in a space, allowing people the space to feel connected to one another, to not feel so isolated and alone. So, you know, I think one of the benefits of what's happening right now is that people are honing in a little bit more to how important those connections that we have are, and how, that we usually take them a little bit for granted. But right now we're so desperate to be connected to one another that in some ways people are working harder at it. Making sure to catch up with people they haven't seen in a while. Um, Watching each other's work online and writing to each other, and even these things like Zoom rehearsals. And it feels more important. And I guess that's it. Is that I really believe that as humans, that connection is the most important thing. And in our art, in my art at least, that is the most important thing. And I hope that I can achieve that a little bit even during these times through some of the online stuff. And I hope that when all of this is over, we can all be together again and laughing and hugging and experiencing the same thing in a space together.
That's so true. Well, this conversation has been really inspiring. Thank you so much for just being willing to be vulnerable and open about your artistry and your excellence and commitment to this work. I'm even more excited than ever, basically, to be able to provide a platform to showcase your art, this piece, when we're allowed to take up space again. And thank you for our audiences listening from wherever you are. I also want to make sure to say and share that we at the Bay Area Women's Theater Festival believe in paying our artists for their work. And every artist you're hearing in this series is compensated for their time, but you can also help support them. You can support Felicity's work on Cara Vita, a Clown Concerto, by making a tax-deductible donation at circuscenter.org/Felicity. And you can also find Felicity's work on social media. And we'll be sharing this interview on our social media pages as well, the Bay Area Women's Theater Festival. And go ahead and check out her work. And please, if you can, do make a donation of any size to keep this work going. Our commitment to this art is unchanged, and we hope you'll continue to help us amplify women's voices. Thank you so much, Felicity. It's been such a pleasure to talk with you, and looking forward to seeing you in person, hopefully not too far in the future.
Oh, me too. Thank you so much.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.